Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the first of our season review segments. It is the player ratings for the entirety of the 2022-2023 season. Now, if you're wondering how this video works, if you've ever watched any of our post-game content, you will know that we do a player rating show after every single game in which we rank every player that played in that game between 1 and 10. 1 obviously being absolutely horrendous and 10 being absolutely perfect, couldn't have been any better based on their performance on that night. Now, this player ratings video is going to be for the entirety of the 2022-2023 season, including the Premier League season, the cup competitions. It is not based off of an average score, so I just want people to know that if I was to give, let's say, Anthony Gordon a 5 out of 10, that isn't based on all of the ratings that I've given him in the individual videos. It's just me sitting back, a few days ago when I was doing the preparation for this video and just thinking about the individual players and their seasons and how I would rank them between 1 and 10 on the basis of their entire season. So it's not an average score based upon what they've gotten in every other video. It's just a completely new score that I've decided I believe these players deserve to be given based on their season as a whole. So it's probably going to be a little bit of a long one, probably going to be a little bit of an in-depth one, but we do this every single year after every single season. We will also, of course, be doing a full season review video where we talk about all of the games, we talk about the situation Everton were in this season, the change of manager, the transfer windows, etc, etc, and that video will be coming a little bit later in this week as well. And then once we've got the season review segments out the way, we can start to look forward to talking about some of the things that need to happen around the football club over the course of the next couple of months before the beginning of the next Premier League season, such as change of boardroom, potential investment. We are still going to be trying to keep up with the Toffees Today videos. I think I'm going to put one up a little bit later on tonight because there's been a little bit more news surrounding potential investment into the football club, as well as a couple of other transfer rumours as well. So we'll try and get one of those up later tonight, but as I said, the full season review will be up a little bit later on in this week. But for now, we are going to do the player ratings for the entirety of the 2022-2023 season. I'm sure that there will be ratings in here that you disagree with. I'm sure that there will be players in here that you believe I've been a little bit generous to, and maybe some players you believe I've been a little bit harsh to, but that's the whole point of these types of videos. This is why we're doing it as a live stream. If you want to get involved in the live comments, please do so for every player and let me know whether you agree with me or whether you disagree with me. And if you disagree with me, what would you have given the player yourself? So let's get straight into it anyway. I've obviously separated these into categories based upon position. So we've got goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders and forwards. I believe this is every single player that has featured this season or certainly was a member of the first team squad for this season. If I've missed anybody out, then please do let me know in the live comments and I will give them a rating straight away. But let's get straight into it. Jordan Pickford. I'm going to give Jordan Pickford an 8 out of 10 for the season. Obviously, he won Everton's Player of the Season award. That was announced last week and thoroughly deserved as well. I believe it is the third time in 6 years that Jordan Pickford has won that award, and generally you don't really want your goalkeeper winning the Player of the Season because that tends to suggest that it hasn't particularly been a great season if your goalkeeper is winning your Player of the Season award. And that is exactly the situation that Everton are in and have been in for the last, 10 months of this season. And that's exactly the situation Everton have been in for the majority of the time that Jordan Pickford has been at the football club, hence why he's won this award in 3 of the last 6 years, as I've mentioned. For me, again, Jordan played his part this season. We sat here when we done the seasonal player ratings after last season and spoke about how important and imperative Jordan Pickford was in keeping Everton in the Premier League, and how, if it wasn't for Jordan Pickford and his saves against Chelsea, his saves against Manchester United, his saves, in other games last season, Everton would have probably been playing Championship football. And by last season, I mean obviously not this season that we're talking about, I mean the 2021-2022 season. And obviously the hope going into this recent season was that we wouldn't have to rely on Jordan Pickford as much. We wouldn't be in a position where we're needing to sit here and talk about Jordan Pickford as our player of the year, and talking about him again as somebody that is, near enough single-handedly kept Everton in the Premier League. But we are in that position. I will give you a little spoiler. This is the highest grading that anybody has got on this player ratings video. So we're one of about 20-25 names in, and this is the highest rating I've given anybody. I think Jordan was phenomenal throughout the course of the entire season. He obviously had the World Cup in between it as well, which is not something that obviously he would have been used to, or any player would have been used to, so that would have been difficult to have to balance and to have to prepare for. But you look back at some of the saves that Jordan Pickford has made over the course of the last 10 months, and it really does emphasise just how important he is to this football club and just how good of a goalkeeper he is. I've said this before and I will say it again. Football is all about opinions, and opinions are great because some people massively agree with them and some people massively disagree with them. My opinion is Jordan Pickford simply is one of the best goalkeepers in world football, and I don't really care how you look at it. Is he absolutely perfect and can do no wrong? No, of course he isn't. Nobody is. But Jordan Pickford is one of the best goalkeepers in world football, in my opinion. And, as I said, he needed to step up in big moments again this season, and he did that. You look back at some recent moments, his save against Bournemouth, which, looks a fairly comfortable save and one that he should make, but given the situation, given the circumstance, it was an absolutely massive moment. His save to deny Matheus Nunes against Wolves in the 92nd, 93rd minute, whatever that was humongous. I remember watching the game live, and the commentator said at the time, that is a save that could keep Everton in the Premier League. And I remember thinking, well, how is that? Because we're already 1-0 down. We're likely to lose this game. And, what's the difference between 1-0 and 2-0? Obviously, we went on and got a late equaliser, ended up drawing that game and got a point, which was obviously a massive point in our fight for survival. And that save in the 91st, 92nd minute, one-on-one with Matheus Nunes to deny him, ended up being a save that could quite have kept Everton in the Premier League. It was a massive save. Even earlier on in the season, when they maybe didn't mean as much in the sense of how desperate we were for points, but a save to deny Darwin Núñez in the Merseyside derby at Goodison, which was up for save of the season, and for me should have won save of the season over the save that actually did. And never mind the countless amounts of saves he's made in other games that have kept Everton in and around a comfortable position earlier on in the season before obviously everything went wrong. I remember the game against Manchester United not so long ago. We lost that game 2-0 in the end, but I think Jordan made something like 8 or 9 saves in the first half and should have easily been 6 or 7-0 in that first half, and Jordan Pickford was just absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, Jordan gets an 8. I had absolutely no issues with him being given Everton's player of the season. I agreed with it completely, and I do think he is the outstanding performer for the whole of the season. Again, it's quite evident that Everton haven't got very many really good footballers in the team because we've been fighting relegation now for the last 2 seasons, but Jordan Pickford is a goalkeeper that could and would get into any Premier League side and maybe any team in the world. And I know some people will say, well, Ederson in this, yes, maybe he wouldn't get in over Ederson because Ederson's also a really good goalkeeper, but what I'm saying is Jordan Pickford would not look out of place in any team in world football because he is that good, and once again, he's kept Everton in the Premier League with some big moments this season. Has he got room to improve? Of course he has, hence why he's got an 8 and not a 10. But I think he's done a fantastic job. And, obviously he signed his new contract recently. He's spoken about how he wants to keep Everton. He wants to stay at Everton and he's got no desire to leave. And he's comfortable here and he loves this football club. And we can only hope that is the case, because I do look at Jordan and I do think, he's not made, there's not a lot of attention made of him. And, there's not a lot of talk around him. But, put it this way, our backup goalkeeper was a really, really solid backup goalkeeper in Asmir Begovic, who we're going to move on to talk about in a moment, who obviously has now left the football club. And if you watch the video that we put up yesterday talking about that, you will hear my opinion on Asmir Begovic is very, very strong. Even given that, I still think had Asmir Begovic been our number one this season, we'd have been relegated. So that's how good and how important Jordan Pickford is. So Jordan is getting an 8 out of 10. Let's move on to Asmir Begovic then. I'm going to give Asmir a 4 out of 10. Now, obviously, you know, he's been at the football club for a couple of seasons now. He has announced that he is leaving the football club. Only a couple of appearances this season. I believe he played in the game against Fleetwood, was it, earlier on in the Carabao Cup, the win there, and didn't have a particularly lot to do in that moment in that game. Obviously, we were playing a lower league side. It was the start of the season. It was a fairly comfortable, win for Everton. I think I remember him making one big save in the game. And then the other game he played in was the game against Bournemouth in the Cup when we lost 4-1. And again, not going to sit here and blame him for every single, goal that we conceded or every single, mistake in that game. But the reality is he just didn't feature much this season. I think over the course of his time at Everton Football Club, I would have been more than happy to keep him at the football club. And I think he was a genuine, really, really solid number 2. And I think he had 4 clean sheets in 10 games at Everton over the course of the last 3 seasons or 2 seasons. However, again, he just didn't feature much this season. Jordan obviously, luckily, was fit for the majority of the season, and when Jordan was taken out of the team, it was purely on a basis of, those earlier cup games that Frank Lampard decided to give Asmir Begovic the nod for, and as I said, one game against the lower league opposition we won, another game against the Premier League team in which we were absolutely embarrassed in, and although I'm not going to sit here and say that was all Asmir Begovic's fault, you've got 2 games to go on, and one of them we lost 4-1 to a side that at the time we're not really good at football whatsoever. So yeah, again, that isn't a rating, that describes his time at Everton or describes his ability as a goalkeeper. That's just how I seen him this season. We didn't see much of him, and when we did, they weren't the greatest of games to be able to judge him from. So he is getting a 4. I'm sure some people will disagree with that one. Some people will think that's a little bit harsh, but I can't sit here and give him a 7 or an 8 or a 6 based upon, 2 games of football, one in which we lost 4-1 against a team that aren't very good. Let's have it right. I don't care what your loving is with what the loving is with Bournemouth at the moment. They're not a very good team. Andy Lonergan, NA. Can't give him a rating. He's been there. He's been on the bench. He's probably a fantastic fella. He's probably dead sound, and he's probably absolutely brilliant in training, and he probably has his part to play in terms of the experience for Jordan Pickford and the experience for some of the younger goalkeepers. But the reality is he has not once played a game of football for Everton. Did he play in Australia? He might have played 45 minutes in Australia, but other than that, he hasn't played. So yeah, he's not getting a ranking. James Tarkowski then. I'm going to give Tarky a 7. Again, you're not the greatest of seasons in terms of obviously the position that Everton were in. James Tarkowski was, I believe, the only outfield player in the Premier League to have played every single minute of Premier League football this season, which is quite some doing really when you think about the amount of players that play in the Premier League, the amount of centre half that play in the Premier League, the amount of fullbacks that are clearly their team's first team fullback. It's quite some doing to think that James Tarkowski was the only outfield player that managed to complete every single minute. Again, coming in for his first season at the football club, never really had a solid centre-back partnership. He started with Connor Cody, for the first few months of Frank Lampard's Everton career, and then when Frank Lampard was obviously sacked, Sean Dyche come in, and then Michael Keane was put in next to him, and obviously we know Michael Keane isn't the greatest of centre backs, certainly not to have to have next to you if you are James Tarkowski, and then obviously it went to Yerry Mina, and Tarky looked a lot more comfortable with Yerry Mina in there, because Yerry Mina was simply our best centre-half, and maybe it should have been Yerry Mina, from the minute Sean Dyche walked in instead of Michael Keane, but for whatever reason, it was Michael Keane. Carter says Begovic also played in that home win against West Ham. He did. He played in the 1-0 win over West Ham United, and yeah, again, not massively memorable from that game to remember him from. It was our first win of the season, I believe, but I don't particularly think he had much to do. But yeah, like I said, I think James Tarkowski, on the whole, given the difficulty of the situation, in the sense of that, coming in under one manager, and then obviously mid-season, a new manager coming in, obviously the Sean Dyche being somebody that has worked with James Tarkowski in the past. It's never easy when you're a centre-back and you're constantly having to change who's playing next to you, and you're the only constant. Michael Keane is obviously a very different centre-half than Yerry Mina, and Yerry Mina is obviously a very different centre-half than Connor Cody. I think Tarky's stats were good all season in terms of his blocks, in terms of his interceptions. He did make some mistakes, when he did have some moments where he was caught on the ball, or he lost the ball in a dangerous area. He had one against Bournemouth where he lost the ball in a dangerous area, and unfortunately enough, Yerry Mina was able to come over and make the block. But I think on a whole, as the season goes, and for him as in his first year at Everton Football Club, first season at Everton Football Club, played a lot of football, would have undoubtedly been fatigued and tired at times throughout the course of the season, and yet not once did he moan, not once did he ask to be taken out, not once did he, go down with an injury to try and get a couple of weeks off. He ploughed through it, he played through it, and for the most part, every single week he was solid. There were a couple of weeks, as I mentioned, where he was poor, and we maybe identified that, but for the most part, I don't really remember many times I was doing a player ratings video and I was calling James Tarkowski poor. Even when Everton lost, even when Everton were losing games we should have been winning, even when Everton weren't performing, I'd still find myself giving James Tarkowski a decent rating and saying, you know what, he was all right today. We weren't great, but individually he was all right. So, yeah, I think a 7 for the season is maybe a bit generous given the given the situation Everton were in, but considering he played every minute of Premier League football, and as I said, it was his first season at the football club, multiple different partners, which is never easy to deal with. I thought generally he had a really good season, James Tarkowski. So yeah, he is getting a 7 out of 10. On to Nathan Patterson. I'm going to give Nathan a 5.5. Yeah, difficult season for Nathan Patterson, I think. Difficult season for Nathan Patterson. Moments where he looked really good, moments where he looked really strong, moments where he looked really impressive. He's obviously struggled with multiple injuries this season, which isn't good, and is hopefully something that does not become a problem, and something that doesn't become a reoccurring matter. But he's had 3 sorts of big injuries this season. He started the season really, really well. In terms of he come back from an injury, obviously towards the back end of last season, and then when he come back, he was really, really good, really tenacious, battling, and it was in that period where we weren't winning games, but we weren't losing games either. I think we went 7 games unbeaten. After the defeat to Chelsea on the opening game of the season, I think we went 7 games unbeaten, and Nathan Patterson was pivotal in those games. Don't get me wrong, as I said, we weren't winning, but we weren't losing either. We were drawing games, and defensively, I thought we looked really good and we looked really strong. And as I said, Nathan was brilliant in those moments. Going forward, he looked really sharp. As I said, he was aggressive, he was tenacious, he was battling, he was putting himself about. And then he got an injury. And then obviously he come out of the team for a number of weeks and months, and Seamus Coleman stepped in, and then he come back from his injury, and he never quite looked the same. He never quite looked as good. He never quite looked as sharp. He never quite looked as aggressive, as tenacious, as attacking. He just never quite seemed to have that edge. Maybe it was because he was still, struggling, and maybe it was because he was still trying to sort of play through that pain. Maybe it was just because, naturally he lost a little bit of an edge because of that injury. I don't know, but he just never looked the same after that injury. He come back, and I remember thinking, right, we've got Nathan Patterson back now. He was absolutely fantastic before the break, and he come back and he just wasn't the same. He just wasn't the same. He struggled. His form was bad. I remember, he was making mistakes. He was then taken out the team for Seamus Coleman for a while, and then he sort of was finding his way back in on the basis that Everton weren't really playing well and we needed to make a change. And then he picked up another injury, and then obviously he went missing again. So yeah, a little bit worrying for me, for Nathan Patterson, in the sense of that he is in danger of making a habit of this, and by this I mean, picking up 2-3 injuries in the Premier League season, which keeps him out for the majority of the season. We don't want that to be a constant. Obviously, it was the same the season before. He picked up a big injury and was out for a while. And this season just gone, he's picked up a number of injuries and ultimately hasn't been able to gain any consistency. So, yeah, again, I think a 5.5 was relatively, sort of a standard score for a player who had, good moments in spells. A really good spell, at the beginning of the season, but then injuries completely ruined his season, and when he come back, he just wasn't the same. So yeah, Nathan Patterson is getting a 5.5. Mason Holgate is getting a 2. Yeah, I'm at this stage with Mason where I just don't see what his future is at Everton Football Club. I don't see how he has a future at Everton Football Club. I don't see in what world he has a future in Everton Football Club. I just don't get it. I simply don't get it. I don't get why he's still here. Is it because nobody wants to buy him and he's contracted to the football club? Is it because maybe the football club gave him a new contract at a time when maybe they should have been looking to not do that? The reality is, look, Mason Holgate just simply is not good enough. He simply is not good enough, and I understand that, we aren't exactly in a sort of a position ourselves at the moment to be looking at players and going, well, you're not good enough to play for Everton, because as a collective we've been an absolute disaster for the last 18 months. But the reality is, and the truth of the situation is, it's just Mason Holgate is just not good enough, and pretty much every time he played this season, he looked like an absolute disaster waiting to happen. I can't remember watching him once and thinking, do you know what, you had a really, really good game there. He come off the bench a couple of times in different positions. I remember him coming off the bench. Was it against Tottenham or Arsenal? In central midfield when the game was already gone, and he never really touched the ball. He never really had any control of the ball. He never really did anything positive, and obviously he's played fullback a couple of times and just, being an absolute, liability for the most part. And that might sound a little bit harsh, and that might sound a little bit, a little bit cutthroat, but that's the reality of the situation. I think Mason strikes me as the type of player that if he is going to have any type of good performance or any type of decent run, then that decent run will come when he is being given a run of 4, 5, 6 games in the team and consistently being given that chance in the team, no matter how he performs. And the reality is Mason Holgate is not the type of player that you can keep out of the team for 6 months and then put in for 1 week and hope that he's going to turn around and put in an exceptional performance, because he isn't. More often than not, he's going to get himself sent off, or he's going to give away a penalty, or he's going to make an absolutely ridiculous decision. Whenever we've seen Mason have a bit of good form in the past at Everton, it's always been on the back of, a bit of trust and a bit of, a bit of game time under his belt in terms of 2, 3, 4 games. And then he started to play into some form a little bit. He's never been a player that you can just throw in the deep end without any armbands and he'll excel. He's just not that type of player. And this season, I think he was, when he played, poor. And he didn't play an awful lot for those reasons. So yeah, he is getting a 2. Michael Keane, I'm going to give Michael Keane a 4.5. Now, the 0.5 is for that goal and assist. The goal against Spurs, which was an absolute rocket, and the assist against Wolves, of course, which was again a big moment. That's twice now in 2 seasons that Michael Keane has pretty much been absolutely useless defensively, but when we've needed them at the other end of the pitch, he's come up really, really big in some big moments. The goal against Spurs was obviously fantastic. Really, really good strike, really, really good effort, and really well taken. And as I said, the assist against Wolves was also a really good, really good bit of attacking play. It seems a little bit strange, really. It seems like Michael Keane is, and I'm not just saying this for comedic effect or to try and get clicks or whatever, but it generally does. I don't know if anybody else feels like this. It generally does feel like Michael Keane is so much better going forward than he is defensively, which is mad considering he's a centre half. But yeah, look, obviously he started the season not in the team. The starting centre-back partnership were James Tarkowski and Connor Cody. He played the odd game during that spell when Connor Cody had come off, or when maybe we'd have an injury and we needed to go 5 at the back. The only real spell of football he had in the team was when Sean Dyche come into the football club. He played 10 games, we conceded 20 goals, he made numerous mistakes, he had numerous games where he just looked completely out of his depth. James Tarkowski struggled when he was playing next to him because of that lack of confidence in your partner and whether he's going to make a mistake or whether he's going to cock up, and Michael Keane is that, and he's been that throughout his entire Everton career, whether we like it or not. As I said, going forward, I'd probably give Michael Keane a 7, an 8 out of 10, because his moments going forward were an equaliser against Tottenham in a massive, massive game in which we picked up a massive point, and an assist in the Wolves game, which was absolutely huge as well. But defensively, it sort of cancels out that good work going forward when you think about the 20 goals we conceded in the 10 games that he played when Sean Dyche come into the football club. And, again, his position at centre-back become very, very untenable, and that's the reason why Sean Dyche made the change, because I firmly do believe that even if he was bang average, he would have continued in that team because of clearly how much Sean Dyche likes Michael Keane and believes in Michael Keane. But the fact that he was that bad that even Sean Dyche turned around and said, no, you're going to have to come out, just shows defensively how bad he is. And for me, he's somebody that Everton just simply cannot be relying on next season. And it's worrying because we've now lost Yerry Mina and Connor Cody, so Michael Keane by default is one of the starting 2 centre-backs at this moment now. Obviously that will change because I'm sure we'll bring in at least one centre-back in the transfer window, but yeah, for me, just not good enough. Defensively, as he always is, really poor, susceptible to making mistakes, positional wise, shocking. And yeah, I just don't see a future for him at Everton. I really don't, and I'd be lying if I was to say I do. Next then, Yerry Mina. I'm going to give Yerry a 6.5. Again, obviously his season hindered by injuries at the beginning of it, and I think when Frank Lampard brought in Connor Cody and James Tarkowski in the summer, it was on the auspices that he wasn't quite happy with Yerry Mina and Yerry Mina's injury problems, and he wanted to bring in 2 centre-halves that he ultimately could rely on and know would be there week in, week out, regardless of the situations. Nothing unusual that for Yerry. We've known for years now, years and years and years, that Yerry Mina on his day when he's fit is one of the best centre-backs on the planet, and without a shadow of a doubt Everton's best centre-back on his day when he's fit. But when he isn't fit, when he's out for 2 or 3 months with an injury, or when he's been out for 6 weeks and he comes back and then he gets injured in his return game within 20 minutes and then he's out for another 5 or 6 weeks. We've known for a long time that Yerry's unreliability is something that has been a big problem with him during his time at Everton, and ultimately it's the reason as to why he hasn't been given a new contract. I don't think there's a doubt in my mind and anybody watching that if Yerry Mina was even guaranteed to be fit for 25 games next season, he would have been given a new deal, and rightly so, because that's how good of a footballer he is and how good of a defender he is. But when we needed him most, he stepped in, and to be fair to Yerry Mina, he was fit for pretty much the entirety of the time that Sean Dyche has been at the football club. It was Sean Dyche, pardon me, that made the decision to play Michael Keane next to James Tarkowski when he wanted to take Conor Cody out. Yerry Mina was fit, Yerry Mina was available, Yerry Mina was on the bench, and he didn't want to make that change. He didn't want to play Yerry Mina, he wanted to play, as I said, Michael Keane. And, after 10 games of absolute disaster by Michael Keane, Yerry finally got his chance, stepped in, and for those remaining, whatever it was, 6 games of the season, he was absolutely fantastic. Obviously got the equaliser against Wolves, which was a massive moment, and of course he was absolutely colossal against Bournemouth as well. And another player who's announced he'll be leaving the football club, and he will be missed because of his personality and on his day how good he is. But the reality is he wasn't reliable enough, and for the money that he was on and his age, giving him a new contract would have been, for me, a very, 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 very controversial decision. And yeah, as I said, he gets to that rating because for me, I think when we needed him and when he had to be called upon, he turned up. But again, another season of not really seeing him much, and you can't really give him any higher of a rating, based upon that. Next, then we have got Vitaly Mykolenko. I'm going to give Vitaly Mykolenko a 6. Again, not the greatest footballer in the world. Not the most talented, not the most gifted. Did play a lot of football this season and had a lot of performances where he was alright. Don't get me wrong, he had a lot of performances as well where he wasn't very good. But again, he is what he is. Vitaly, he is what he is. He's a bang average left back, probably good enough to be a number 2 in the Premier League, and probably good enough to be a starting left back in the Championship. Not much more, not much less. Again, I think I've sort of boosted his rating based upon his availability. I know obviously he was injured towards the end of the season, and that caused a little bit of a problem. But for the majority of the season, his availability, his consistency in terms of being fit and being available for selection. He was our only left back for the majority of the season because of Ruben Vinagre's injuries and clearly Ruben Vinagre wasn't in the plans of either Everton manager this season. But yeah, again, I think he was alright at times. Don't get me wrong, I think that Vitaly Mykolenko isn't good enough to be Everton starting left back going forward, and I think Everton need a left back this summer. I do. But don't get me wrong, Everton need the striker this summer, Everton need the winger, Everton need the number 10, Everton need the centre back, Everton probably need another centre midfielder. There's a lot that Everton need this summer, and starting left back for me is one of those positions. But I think for what he was asked to do, I think there was a lot of games where he was just alright. As I said, there was a lot of games where he was absolutely ripped to bits as well because he just simply couldn't deal with the forwards that he was coming up against. But there was a lot of games where he was alright, he was average, he wasn't great, he didn't do anything particularly amazing, but he didn't make any individual mistakes either. He was just alright. So yeah, that's the rating he is getting. Next then, Ben Godfrey. I'm giving Ben Godfrey a 3. Yeah, really disappointing season for Ben this season. Not much game time. Again, couple of injuries. I think he got injured in that game against Chelsea at the start of the season, and then obviously he was out for a number of months beyond that. Again, just not massively impressed. I'll be honest, just not massively impressed. I think defensively, he never really seems to have recovered in terms of his fitness from that period of COVID that he had a couple of years ago. He's always been somebody that has needed to improve defensively in terms of his defensive ability and his defensive capabilities. Again, that has been on show this season at times when he's been called upon and he's been asked to do a job. Yeah, I think this was his without doubt, his most difficult season in an Everton shirt. And obviously, there's big question marks around his future. And if Everton were to get a bid, to sell him, I don't think there'll be many teams that will be knocking on the door to take Ben Godfrey off Everton this summer. I really, really don't. Certainly not for the figure that we signed him for, or more than the figure that we signed him for, because let's be honest, that's what Everton would want. So they'd want round about the money that they paid for Ben, and I don't think there's going to be many teams that are going to be willing to offer that. So yeah, not a very good season whatsoever. Obviously massively hindered by injuries and stuff as well, which isn't his fault, but certainly a player that you expect more from, and hopefully this was just a bad season for him, but ultimately, who knows? Next then, we're going to try and fly through some of these because we're still on defenders and we've still got midfielders and forwards to go. Seamus Coleman, giving Seamus a 7.5. Again, shouldn't really be somebody that Everton are relying on, because of his age, because of his the injuries he's had throughout his career, the difficulties that he's had. He just shouldn't be somebody that Everton are relying on. Seamus Coleman should be in a position now where he maybe plays 5 games a season, 6 games a season. He comes on to get a standing ovation. He comes on and has his luxury moments, but certainly not somebody that we should be holding our hands on or holding our hat on being the saviour for this football club. However, having said that, it isn't Seamus's fault that we're in the position where we have to do that. And Seamus this season really, really stood up, I felt. Really, really stood up. Made himself known. Made himself, a leader. Battled through some difficult times. Picked everybody up through some difficult times. And the Blues says better than Tarky. I don't necessarily think he had a better season than James Tarkowski, but I'm giving him that extra rating because I think at the times when we really, really needed him, and James Tarkowski will have needed Seamus Coleman, by the way, because he was new to the football club. He will have needed at times that guidance and that understanding of how much this means and what this means to Everton. And I think Seamus pulled through with that. The goal against Leeds was an unbelievable moment, and again another big win in another big game that we really needed to win. He pulled through with that, and he also put in some amazing individual performances when you were sort of looking thinking, oh, Seamus will have a difficult game today against X, Y and Z, and he didn't. He turned up and he was just absolutely phenomenal. And obviously again, he's had his problems with injuries and his struggles with injuries, and that injury he had towards the back end of the season was absolutely horrific and heartbreaking, but he still even on a stretcher, he still managed to pick himself up. He still managed to clap the fans off, and he still managed to try and get behind the players and support his teammates. And as I said, I think Seamus was fantastic this season, not just on the pitch but also I think he really, really stood up and was counted for this season, and he really, really led this team. So yeah, Ruben Vinagre next. I don't even have to look at my notes. He's getting a 1. He was very, very close to getting an NA. Very, very close to getting an NA. But then I realised he played, half an hour of the game against Chelsea. I think he come on as a substitute. He got an assist in the pre-season friendly against Dynamo Kiev. And he maybe played in one of the earlier cup competitions. I can't remember. But yeah. Yeah, very, very, very close to getting an NA. Very close to getting an NA. And then Connor Cody. Let me just double check. Connor Cody is getting I've given him a 6. I think that might be a bit generous, given obviously he wasn't in the team for the last 6-7 weeks, or however long it's been since Sean Dyche has been at the football club. I think Connor done well at the start of the season next to James Tarkowski. I think he worked hard. I think he was clearly influential on the team in terms of his leadership, in terms of his his commitment to playing for this football club, his commitment to wanting to win, his commitment to wanting to drag Everton forward. Something that we all identified last summer that Everton desperately needed was leaders. We all sort of looked and said, well, we've only really got Seamus Coleman and Jordan Pickford who are comfortable enough to scream and shout on the football pitch, and who are comfortable enough to lead. And we brought Connor Cody in, and Connor was that. His individual performances at times weren't particularly great, and again, he was culpable for a couple of mistakes and a couple of moments in big games that ultimately cost us. But I think his leadership, I think his commitment, I think his desire, and his performance against Bournemouth on the last game of the season was absolutely phenomenal, and exactly what Everton needed to to keep us in the Premier League. So yeah, again, played his part, importance, leadership importance, not unbelievable, but yeah, he's getting a 6. Onto the midfielders now. We are going to fly through these because it is about 150 degrees in my bedroom, and I think I'm going to faint within the next 10 minutes. Dwight McNeil, I'm giving him a 7. I'm probably going to up James Tarkowski's to a 7.5, I think, because he probably deserved that. Dwight McNeil getting a 7. Again, I love Dwight McNeil. And I know some people will say, "Oh, but Cam, he was only good for half a season, and he was awful for the first part of the season under Lampard, etc., etc." Look, Dwight McNeil ended up Everton's top goal scorer. Without Dwight McNeil's goals, Everton would have been relegated. And Dwight McNeil, by the way, before today, I think his best Premier League season was 3 goals, 4 goals, something like that. He got 7 this season. His performance against Brighton was absolutely emphatic. His efforts since Sean Dyche has come into the football club have been nothing short of absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. His fight, his desire, his passion, his work rate, is just everything about him has been absolutely just second to none since Sean Dyche has come into the football club. He's had to play in different positions. He's had to do different roles. He's had to, play in positions that he's never played in before, that he isn't comfortable in, such as left back and in defensive roles. And every single time he's been asked to do that, he's done it, and he's done it perfectly with no real issue. Yeah, I think he's been excellent this season. He's had his moments, don't get me wrong. He's had some poor performances, and he's had some, performances where you've looked and you've gone, do you know what, not great. But I think ever since Sean Dyche has come in, he's been undoubtedly Everton's best player since Sean Dyche has come in. And I think he's always worked hard, he's always battled, he's always give absolutely everything, and I think he deserves the plaudits for that. So yeah, he's getting a 7 out of 10 this season. Amadou Onana, I'm going to give him a 6. I think he's been all right. I think probably what you would expect for a young lad whose first season in the Premier League. I think people seem to forget that Amadou Onana hadn't played much professional football before he signed for Everton. I think he only had 60 odd appearances or something like that for Lille professionally. So, this was always going to be a bit of a difficult season for him, and he was always going to have a bit of a difficult time. I think he showed in moments and in games that he is really, really talented, and he's got the ability to be a top player. However, I think he showed in other games that he maybe isn't quite ready yet. I think he looked lost at times. I think he looked like he just didn't really know what to do or where to be or where to go. Again, I think I said 6.5, didn't I, Blues? I think, did I say 6.5? Did I say 6? I've got 6.5 written down here, so yeah, 6.5. Again, not absolutely tragic, but maybe not as good as what we wanted him or expected him or hoped he would be in his first season. But maybe that's our fault as well for expecting a little bit too much from a lad who, has never played in the Premier League before and is only just sort of, starting his professional career. There's no doubt he will get better. Whether that's at Everton or not, we'll wait and see. But yeah, I thought he was average this season, and that's maybe being a little bit generous. Next then, let's move on to Abdoulaye Doucouré. I'm giving Doucouré a 7 out of 10. Doucouré's rank and rating is massively boosted by the last 4 weeks of the season, I'll be honest. I think when we needed him most, he stepped up. His goal against Bournemouth, the importance of that is obviously indescribable, considering if he wouldn't have scored that goal, Everton would be playing Championship football now. And for a player who looked absolutely nailed on to leave the football club in January, and very clearly wasn't liked by by Frank Lampard and wasn't preferred by Frank Lampard, I think for him to have come in, not only come in but stayed at the football club, got his head down, worked hard, still trained, still turned up and done what he needed to do, and then be given that opportunity by Sean Dyche and really take that opportunity with both hands. Goals against Forest, goals against Brighton, his goal against Bournemouth. I think he's been, for what he is, I think he is overperformed. I do, because I don't think Abdoulaye Doucouré is a great footballer, I'll be honest. I think in terms of technically, I think he's quite an average footballer. I think sometimes he looks really good and other times he looks really poor. His touch is off, his balance is off. Sometimes he looks really poor, and that was the case this season as well. But when he needed to step up, when he needed to be, when he needed to take accountability, when we needed somebody to drag us through the situation, he stepped up and he did that, and I think he deserves that, the 7 rating, for that. Next then, Alex Iwobi. I'm going to give Alex a 6.5 as well, same as Amadou. I think his work rate was good this season. I think his desire was there. I think his efforts were sort of unquestioned. I think his commitment was unquestioned. The stats will tell you that Alex Iwobi creates more chances than any other player in Everton's team, and that Alex Iwobi is by far Everton's best creative outlet, and maybe that is the case. I just don't see enough from Alex Iwobi. I don't think we see enough goals. I don't think we see enough assists, and maybe that's because of other people's faults in the team. I don't know, but I just don't think we see as much as what I would like to see from Alex Iwobi. So I think he had a decent season in terms of his, as I said, his battle and his fight and his commitment and his desire, and his efforts. I don't think you can question those whatsoever, but his actual output, I would have liked more from. So he's getting a 6.5. Tom Davies is getting a 2. Same with Mason Holgate. I just don't really see what the point is of Tom Davies at Everton anymore. I think his contract's over this season. It would be silly to give him a new deal. When he's played, he's not done much. He's not done anything particularly impressive. And for most of the season, he's obviously sat on the bench. Idrissa Gana Gueye, I'm going to give him a 6.5 as well, I think. Again, an up and down season for Ghana. I think there were times when he struggled. There were times when he made individual mistakes that directly led to goals, and that isn't questionable. That is sheer fact. But there were also times when he stepped up. I thought he stepped up massively in that game against Bournemouth. I thought his experience and his professionalism was really on show. I thought he stepped up numerous times over the course of those last few months when we were in a really difficult position and when things were looking really grim in the good games and the good performances. Brighton was another one. I think he looked really, really good, really solid. His break-up play was good, and maybe Garner's one of them players that, when he has a good game, you don't really, a little bit like a goalkeeper. If a goalkeeper makes a mistake, it's the end of the world, because more than likely it ends up in a goal. Same with Garner, but when a goalkeeper has a brilliant game, you don't really pay too much attention to it. A little bit similar with Garner. When he has a brilliant game, because he's breaking up the play and he's moving the ball, you don't really pay much attention to it, because it's not the lovely, the lovely, beautiful football that you maybe see from your wingers or your strikers. But when he has a bad game, you pay attention to it. Yeah, I think for the majority of the season, he done well. I think he worked hard. I think he battled. Again, obviously we need to be looking for a long-term replacement, but I thought he was okay. And then James Garner, again, I'm going to give James Garner a 6. Obviously, that is based upon the fact we didn't see him much this season. Now, don't get me wrong, James Garner, I think will be a fantastic signing for Everton, and I think we will see much more of him next season. And his performance against Bournemouth, on the final day, just shows how good of a footballer he is, how calm he is on the ball, how cool he is, how collected he is. He just is a really, really, really comfortable footballer, and he is exactly what we need. By the way, James Garner, exactly what we need. We need more footballers in this team that are cool, that are calm, that are collected, that don't panic on the ball, that don't make many mistakes, that don't really force things, that are just comfortable with the ball at their feet. We need more of them. And James Garner very, very certainly is one of those players. We just didn't see him much this season, and for those people that are frustrated or, annoyed that I've given him a lower ranking than Onana or Iwobi or whatever, we just didn't see him an awful lot. It took him a while to break into the team in terms of getting even his first minutes in the side. Then he had a big injury to his back, so he was obviously out for a number of months with that. And then when we finally started to see him toward the end of the season, he was playing in a midfield that was struggling at the times. It does have to be said, we're struggling. But he was doing well, he was holding his own, he was keeping the ball, he was moving it about, he looked good, he looked promising, he looked solid. And then, obviously, the last couple of games in the season, when he was asked to do a more difficult job, when he was asked to fight, when he was asked to battle, when he was asked to defend, when he was asked to play in a position that maybe, well, he definitely wasn't used to playing in and has never played in before, he did that really, really well as well. So, yeah, again, would love to see more of him, and his rating isn't based upon the fact that I think he's had a poor season. We just haven't seen an awful lot of him. But when we did see him, I was really, really impressed with him, considering it was his first season. So yeah. And then the final midfielder, Anthony Gordon, is getting a 5 because he obviously left in January. He did leave our top goal scorer at the time, and I think he does deserve to have a little bit of credit for that at the very least. But yeah, look, I don't really want to talk too much about Anthony Gordon. He jumped ship at the first opportunity. Not that I'm particularly bothered about it, because Everton got a ridiculous amount of money for him for doing that. But yeah, he scored some important goals earlier on in the season when we needed him to, and then he ran away when things got difficult. So yeah, not too much to say. On to the forwards then. Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I'm gonna give Dom a 5. I think it would be difficult to give him any more based on the fact that other players have gotten, sort of 5.5s, and they've had alright seasons. Certainly players like Garner and Onana who've had alright seasons and got 6.5. Look, there's absolutely no doubting that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is a fantastic forward. There's absolutely no doubt in that Dominic Calvert-Lewin in this Everton team, fully fit for 38 games in a season, scores probably 15, maybe even more goals, and Everton have absolutely no worries whatsoever about fighting for their lives or staying in the division. The fact of the matter is, that isn't the Dominic Calvert-Lewin that we've got. The Dominic Calvert-Lewin that we've got is constantly injured, is in for one game and out for 6, and is ultimately unreliable. And even though at times this season, when he was in the team, and he was, in the team towards the back end of the season for a few weeks on the bounce, he looked good, and we looked much better with him in there. And although we didn't score many, we overall, that Brighton game is a big example of how much better we are with Dominic Calvert-Lewin in the team than when Dominic Calvert-Lewin isn't in the team. However, I can't sit here and give him an 8 or a 9 or a 10 or a 7 or whatever, because he just wasn't there enough. And I don't blame him for that, because I don't blame him for his injuries. But the reality is, he just wasn't there enough. And yeah, I can't particularly give him a high ranking, on the back of that. Andros Townsend, let's get this one out the way. NA didn't play a game this season. I think he played one game for the under-21s. So yeah, he can't get a rating. Damari Gray. I'm going to give him a 6 as well. Again, just not particularly great. But in a similar vein to Vitaly Mykolenko, he is what he is. Damari Gray, he is what he is. He's not an unbelievable footballer. He's not a clinical finisher. He's not a fantastic winger or creator. He's not a fantastic goal scorer, because if he was any of those, he A, wouldn't be playing for Everton, and we B, wouldn't have signed him for 1.5 million quid. He stepped up in some big moments. The goal against Manchester City at the Etihad was massive. The equaliser against Forest earlier in the season at Goodison was huge as well. But for the most part, he just wasn't good enough. And he isn't good enough. And again, I don't blame him for that. I blame the recruitment team and the people in charge of this football club for putting us in a position where we're relying on players that aren't good enough to do a job that they can't do. But that's the reality of the situation. He just wasn't good enough. He had moments, as he does, Demarai Gray, in a 38-game season. He'll have 5 moments where you go, what a great goal, or what a great performance, or what a great moment. But for the most part, he just ran round. I think towards the back end of the season, he worked hard. I think he worked hard against Bournemouth and put a fight in, and put an effort in, and put a bit of desire in. But generally, he just isn't very good. And it's as simple as that. Next then, Neal Maupay. I'm giving him a 3. Obviously, 1 goal for the season, which is atrocious. The reason he gets a better rating than Mason Holgate and Tom Davies is because I think he wasn't as disastrous as either of those 2 players when he was brought on. But he still offers Everton nothing. I'm fairly certain he will leave in the summer and he will not be an Everton player anymore. But yeah, a truly woeful decision by the club to even think he could come in and replace Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Again, I don't blame him. I blame the people in charge. I blame the recruitment team. I blame the director of football. But yeah, pretty much an awful season. 1 goal in however many appearances he had this season is just horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. And yeah, I don't really see what other way out of that he is. And then finally, we have got Ellis Sims. I'm going to give Ellis a 5. He obviously scored that goal against Chelsea, which was massive. The only opportunities he was given to start games were 2 games that we were never going to get anything out of, Arsenal and Liverpool. He's come off the bench a number of times, worked hard, battled, put himself about, fought for the ball. And yeah, whether or not he's got a future at this football club, whether or not we see him more next season, I don't know. But yeah. He was better than Maupay, put it that way. Better than Maupay. Anyway, we are going to leave it there. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. In fact, I'm going to do a bonus segment, and I won't lie. I've taken this bonus segment from a wrestling YouTube channel that I've been watching, and what they do is they basically rate pay-per-views, wrestling pay-per-views, or champions or whatever on 3 words or less. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rate every single Everton player this season in 3 words or less. Jordan Pickford, absolute world class. Asmir Begovic, didn't see enough. Andy Lonergan, was he there? James Tarkowski, rock solid performer. Nathan Patterson, too many injuries. Mason Holgate, why? Michael Keane, rocket against Spurs. Yerry Mina, injuries ruined career. Vitaly Mikalenko, just a bit crap. Ben Godfrey, 3 words. Very worrying season, I'll say. Seamus Coleman, captain, leader, legend. Ruben Vinagre is No, that's 4 words. Ruben Vinagre. What can we say for Ruben Vinagre? Does he exist? Connor Cody played his part. Dwight McNeil. What can we say about Dwight McNeil? Dwight McNeil. Worked bollocks off. I'm sure you can fill in the gaps. Amadou Onana could be better. Abdoulaye Doucouré. What can we say about Abdoulaye Doucouré? Ooh, probably should have done research for this. This is all off the top of the head in case you can't tell. Abdoulaye Doucouré stepped up massively. Alex Iwobi, most creative player. There you go, the Blues. Tom Davis, lovely haircut. Why? Adissa Gay, okay. Return. Yeah, that'll do. It's 3 words or less, so that'll do. James Garner. I need more. Anthony Gordon. Horrible little rat. DCL. Must move on. Damari Gray. Not good enough. Andros Townsend. Lovely hair transplant. Neil Mopai. Why? And Ellis Sims owns Stamford Bridge. There you go. They are my player ratings for the season and 3 words or less to describe every single Everton player this season. I believe that's everybody. If I've missed somebody, then please let me know in the comment section down below. We will be back with the full season review over the course of the next coming days, and of course we will have our Toffees Today videos over the next few days as and when breaking news breaks. But let me know if you have enjoyed this video. If you have, please do leave a like. It does only take a second, and if you are new to the channel, then don't forget to subscribe. Massive thank you for watching. It would mean a massive amount to me if you could like and subscribe. Until next time, big thanks for watching. Up the Toffees, and we'll see you later.